It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. A bipartisan Senate resolution supporting President Trump's policy to recognize the self-proclaimed president of Venezuela, Juan Guaidó, fell through on Wednesday because the Republicans did not want to include a line that would prohibit the U.S. from taking military action in Venezuela. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida and New Jersey Senator Robert Mendez were the co-authors of the resolution. Senator Mendez wanted to include a line in the resolution reaffirming the War Powers Act, stating that the resolution should not be constructed or construed as authorization for the use of military force in Venezuela. Senator Rubio refused and withdrew the resolution altogether. Meanwhile, Pope Francis has now offered and expressed his support for the idea of the Vatican mediating between the government of President Maduro and the opposition in Venezuela. Now, originally, the opposition had rejected all negotiation offers from Maduro. Recently, though, there has been some reports that Juan Guaidó might accept Pope Francis's offer. Joining me now to discuss all of this today is Mark Weisbrot. Mark is the co-director of the Center for Economic Policy and Research, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. Mark, good to have you with us.
Thanks for inviting me, Sharmini.
All right, Mark, let's start with the Senate resolution on Venezuela. What do you think this means that the resolution has now failed and the assertion of the War Powers Act?
Well, this resolution was going to say that the sense of the Senate resolution that they agree with the recognition of Guaidó as the president of Venezuela. But Rubio, who is really the point man for the he's kind of leading this whole effort in the administration, has been for quite a long time. He didn't want to have language which is just standard language, which restated the actual law of the United States. There was nothing in the resolution that should be construed as supporting military intervention. So this shows mainly the significance is it shows how extreme this group, Rubio, Bolton, Trump, and Elliott Abrams, how extreme they are and how they really want to keep this option, as they say, on the table, even though even threatening it like they do is a violation of the UN Charter. So I think that's important. But the sanctions are also important. So there's pushback in Congress against the military. I don't think most of Congress would want, certainly the vast majority of Congress wouldn't support military action at this point. And so, but there's also, I think we shouldn't get too distracted by that because that's not the most likely possibility. The most likely possibility is what's actually happening. There's very severe sanctions on the country that are killing people. And that's been happening, as I've said before on this show, since August of 2017, there's been this financial embargo, which has decimated the oil industry and severely restricted the imports that pay for medicines and food. And so this is continuing. And then, of course, in the last week or so, it's been increased to something that's more like a trade embargo, where Venezuela won't be able to sell its oil to the United States or in other countries where who are allied with the U.S. So they're trying very hard. But I have to emphasize that the U.S. government, the Trump administration, is really bent on overthrowing this government. They don't want a negotiated solution.
All right, Mark, many efforts are underway to negotiate and come to a resolution in Venezuela, a peaceful resolution. Pope Francis has offered to mediate. So have the governments of Mexico and Uruguay, which are organizing a meeting in Montevideo today as we speak. So give us a rundown on who's who and whether Juan Guaido will accept these negotiation offers by the Vatican and Mexico and Uruguay?
Well, the Pope's offer to mediate was very important, and because that's something that's not so easily avoidable. So far, the administration has not made any response, and that's very telling. And it's too bad we don't have more inquisitive journalists in some of the larger media, because they should be asking the administration, what do you think about this offer from the Pope? And the opposition doesn't want to negotiate at all, and they keep saying that. And of course, Pence said that just yesterday or the day before, that and Guaido himself has said that there's not a time for dialogue, but because they're working together. But when Guaido was asked in an interview just today, I think it was, about the Pope's offer, he had a somewhat more ambiguous response. He said that he would welcome the Pope to come to Venezuela, but he didn't say that, and he would welcome any efforts by the Pope, but he didn't say anything about agreeing to the mediation. So I'm guessing that he won't agree to it because Rubio doesn't want this. This shows, again, this is how important that this extremist view that you have in this administration that really wants this extra legal, winner-take-all, most likely violent regime change, and doesn't want anything that involves negotiation. Now, there is something in Uruguay today, and that's a meeting. It's called the International Contact Group, and that includes the European Union, 8 member states separately: France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, and the UK, and 4 countries from Latin America: Costa Rica, Ecuador, Uruguay, and Bolivia. So that's a somewhat more mixed group. And there are a number of European states who don't like the regime change effort. But that group is still, the Trump administration has the upper hand. So what they're really resisting is the places where there's more neutrality. So that would be Mexico and Uruguay, and also the Pope. And so the Pope has to, but in order for the Pope to mediate, he's got to get something from the opposition side, an agreement from them. And that's where you have, again, the U.S. pressure trying to prevent any kind of real mediation. And they're going to try and prevent the contact group from doing that. And right now, they do have a very strong position in there, because most of those are countries that are completely in line with the regime change operation.
All right. Now the Lima group met earlier this week in Canada, and they passed a resolution which Chrystia Freeland, the Foreign Minister of Canada, is calling the Ottawa Declaration. This group seems to have a lot of force, and particularly with the Liberal government of Canada spearheading and doing the bidding for the United States there. How effective do you think that group is, and how does that group weigh against the one that's meeting in Montevideo today?
Well, there's no distance between the government of Canada and Trump. And the same is true for most of the Lima group as well. And it's controlled by people who, I should say there is one difference. The Lima group is not in favor of the military intervention. But again, that's not the main thing that's going on right now. So the Lima group and the government of Canada are very much supporting the regime change operation, and they won't be supporting negotiation in the immediate future. Now, I think as time goes on, if they thought the coup, the opposition thought the coup was going to happen immediately, like a week ago. And that's kind of what the U.S. and its allies were counting on, something that would be really quick. And it's not turning out that way. And so if the government remains in place in Venezuela, for a while, there will be other European countries realizing that, and other countries perhaps in Latin America, that a negotiated solution is necessary. So I think that is a possible scenario going forward. And as I mentioned, there's at least a dozen members of the House that are pushing back, not only against proposed military intervention or threatened military intervention, but also against the coup itself and even the sanctions.
All right, Mark, we'll leave it there for now. I thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to your comments next week.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.